Hello, everyone. It is time for another History Facts with Noob. Edition 6, but Pride Edition 2. Today we are going from the Stonewall riots to talking about the history, or some of the history, of the Pride flag. So, the first Pride flag it actually had 8 colors. I didn't know this. It was created by gay activist and artist Gilbert Baker at the request of the first openly gay man to be elected to public office in California, Harvey Milk. And I'll go ahead and throw that flag up here now and let you know what the colors meant. So pink was for sexuality, red was for life, orange for healing, yellow for sunlight, green for nature, turquoise for art, indigo for harmony, and violet for spirit. Now, a lot of different versions have been made for specific sexualities. They then took out the pink and turquoise lines and made the 6-banded flag that we see the most. And the meaning of the colors in the original 8-banded flag carried over to the colors that made it over to the 6-banded flag. And today you have the Progress Pride flag that I will pop up now. So this flag adds a few new colors to it. Let's talk about them. So the black and brown stripes are meant to represent people of color, but they can also represent people living with or that have died from HIV or AIDS. And the stigma around that virus that is still present in today's society. The pink, baby blue, and white represent the trans community. And the yellow and purple circle represent the intersex community. And the word progress does not just mean the new colors. You may have also noticed the new shape as well. This was done intentionally to shift focus and highlight the importance of the issues on the left. I sincerely appreciate all of you. Happy Pride Month once again. And I'll catch y'all on Friday. See you later. Hello, everyone. It is time for another History Facts with Noob. Edition 6, but Pride Edition 3. Before we get into today's fact, I do want to say I greatly appreciate all the support on all of the History Facts with Noob so far, and the tremendous support on the Pride Edition. All that being said, let's get into today's fact. Today we are going to be talking about the Sacred Band of Thebes, an elite fighting unit that went undefeated for over 40 years, consisting of 150 gay male couples. The rationale being that lovers would fight more aggressively and cohesively than strangers. They were first deployed early in the Boeotian War in 378 BC and became famous for their victory in the Battle of Leuctra against the Spartans. And they remained undefeated for 40 years. It wasn't until 338 BC where their dominance came to an end. In the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC, Macedonian troops led by Philip II and his son Alexander the Great went up against Thebans and people from Athens, their armies. And it was pretty bad. It was a decisive Macedonian victory. But the Sacred Band of Thebes, they did not surrender. They kept fighting until the last one of them fell. And while this was years and years ago, it is reported that When Philip II rode out into the field where the sacred band of Thebes fell, he wept. And he said, "Perish miserably they who think that these men did or suffered aught disgraceful." Now, they were mass buried on the battlefield, but there is a monument there now called the Lion of Coronia, signifying their mass grave. And what's even cooler, that Alexander the Great, who was in that final battle, his army basically took notes from the Sacred Band of Thebes, and then went on to, basically conquer the world. I'd greatly appreciate everything. Stay tuned for our next fact on Friday, and I'll catch you later. Hello, everyone. It is time for another History Facts with Noob. We are on edition 8, but the finale of the Pride editions. I really enjoyed researching these Pride facts, so expect it to make a return next year. And of course, with that, let's get into today's fact. So in 17th century France, there lived a French bisexual cross-dressing opera sword fighter named Julie Dubini. And yes, you heard those accolades correctly. She was born in France around 1673, the only child to Gaston Sir Dubini. And while her father worked in the king's court, she lived in the great stables. Now, sword fighting ran in her blood, as her father was an accomplished sword fighter, so he chose to train her alongside the young men of that time, and that's where her love for dressing as a boy started. And she got into quite a bit of trouble. She had to be pardoned by the King of France twice. One of the instances, she put the deceased body of a nun in their ex-lover's quarters, and then set fire to the place. This actually ended up getting her a death sentence by fire. And despite the rascal she was a professional opera singer, moving to Paris to use this to get out of her death sentence. And it worked. The opera helped persuade the king to lift her death sentence so she could sing with them. And she had an amazing memory for music, performing under the stage name La Maupin from 1690 to 1694. Now, despite being pardoned twice, she threatened to shoot the Duchess of Luxembourg. She found herself in court for attacking her landlord, and humiliated Countess Marino by wearing radishes on the back of her head during a grand ball. And unfortunately, her shenanigans ended when she passed away at the age of 33 in 1707. I appreciate all the support. Y'all have been amazing this month, and just with the series overall. Seriously, thank you so much, and I will catch you next time. See you later. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to History Facts with Noob. Last week I was in Ohio seeing someone for my heart condition, which has led to the next few history facts with Noob being on location. And for today's fact, we were on location in Canton, Ohio, on the grounds of the William McKinley Presidential Museum and Library at the William McKinley Memorial. And I don't know if I've mentioned this, but one of the items on my bucket list is to visit all 39 current and future presidential grave sites. So William McKinley, whom we have talked about before, was president from 1897 to 1901, when he was assassinated by anarchist Leon Czolgosz at the Temple of Music in Buffalo, New York, on the grounds of the World's Fair Expo. McKinley called off the mob that had rushed in on Czolgosz, and in the days following he had seemed to improve, enough so that Vice President at the time, Teddy Roosevelt, went on a camping trip. Unfortunately, by 5 days later, his condition had deteriorated due to gangrene from his wounds, And on September 14th, 8 days after he was shot, McKinley sadly passed away. Historians typically rank McKinley in the top third of presidents, with the Dingley Tariff and Gold Standard Act examples of some of the things he passed while in office, while the Spanish-American War from April to August of 1898 and the annexation of Hawaii in July of 1898 were a couple of the issues that occurred during his presidency. Now, let me just say, this was a very reverent memorial fit for a president. He is interred in the marble sarcophagi on the left as you walk in, with his wife Ida on the right. Their young daughters rest in the wall directly behind them. I appreciate y'all. See y'all Friday for another on-location history fact, and I'll catch you later. Hello, everyone. It is time for another History Facts with Noob. Episode 10. We made the 10 episodes. That's crazy. Thank you all for your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And here's to 10 more episodes. Now, we got a longer one for you today. We are on location in downtown Cleveland, Ohio, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and later Lakeview Cemetery. So, as far as the fact goes, let's start with rock and roll itself. Derived mostly from the rhythm and blues music of the 1940s, rock and roll emerged in the early to mid-1950s as a defined musical style. Although, in May 1942, a Billboard review described Sister Rosetta Tharpe's vocal on the song Rock Me by Lucky Millinder as rock and roll spiritual singing. But where do we get the term or phrase rock and roll? Derived from the term rocking and rolling used by mariners as early as the 17th century to describe the movement of the ship. It came into light even more when in the 1830s the hymn Rocked in the Cradle of the Deep, written by Emma Willard and Joseph Philip Knight, was recorded several times around the start of the 20th century by the OG Bison City Quartet in 1894, the Standard Quartet in 1895, John W. Myers, and Gus Reed after the turn of the century in 1908. Also by this time, African Americans were using the phrase with a religious connotation. In 1938, Metronome magazine stated that Harry James's Lullaby in Rhythm really rocks, and according to Oxford Dictionary, this was one of the early uses of the word rock in describing a style of music. And by the early 1940s, the term rock and roll was being used in describing a style of music by Billboard journalist Maury Oradenker. A double meaning came to fruition, and I'll let you put in what that double meaning was, when the 1947 the song Good Rockin' Tonight was released by Roy Brown. This was a contender for the first rock and roll record, by the way. Many blues and R&B artists followed suit after the success of Good Rockin' Tonight. Unfortunately, these songs were generally classified as race music and were barely acknowledged in mainstream audiences. In 1951, Cleveland-based DJ Alan Freed, whose amazing final resting place will be at the end of this video, began playing this style of music while also popularizing the term rock and roll on mainstream radio on his show The Moondog House on station WJW, or 850 AM, while also being one of the first DJs to promote these black artists to a multiracial audience instead of waiting for a white person to cover their songs. And Freed actually explained his usage of the term rock and roll, calling it swing with a modern name, saying it began on the levees and plantations, took in folk songs, and features blues and rhythm. And as you will see a little bit later, Freed is interred in Lakeview Cemetery, his grave markers in the shape of a jukebox. Cleveland natives and visitors/tourists take off the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame bands and place them on his grave marker as a token of respect. And speaking of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, officially established on April 20th, 1983 by Ahmet Ertegun, founder and chairman of Atlantic Records, and Jan Winter, publisher of Rolling Stone magazine, The search for the right city was long, but in the end they chose right here in downtown Cleveland, Ohio in 1986. They also began inducting nominees in 1986. The inaugural list of nominees included Godfather of Soul, James Brown, King of Rock and Roll, Elvis Presley, Ray Charles, King of Soul, Sam Cooke, Architect of Rock and Roll, Little Richard, Father of Rock and Roll, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, Rock and Roll's first great wild man, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, and the Everly Brothers. They have also since branched away from just rock and roll, blues, and soul music, with the most recent nominee class of 2023 being Kate Bush, Sheryl Crow, Missy Elliott, George Michael, Willie Nelson, Rage Against the Machine, and the Spinners. The groundbreaking opening ceremony took place on June 7, 1993, and it was dedicated on September 1st, 1995, with the ribbon being cut by an ensemble that included Yoko Ono and Little Richard, among others. Now, since its opening in 1986, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has selected new inductees, alternating the formal inductions between New York and Cleveland. And it has 7 floors, each with their own exhibits, from the first floor being dedicated to the roots of rock and roll, the third floor being the official Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the last floor holding large temporary exhibits, switching with the times. I do thank you all so much. I know this was a long one, so if you made it here, you're amazing and a champion. I'll catch y'all next Friday for number 11. See you later.